was so taken by their singing that I kind of lost track of where I was. Remember, you're supposed to walk down and out. Actually, you ever had that experience where you're walking along somewhere and a song just sort of pops into your mind? Out of nowhere, it seems, which is a little bit strange, but then the thing that's really maddening about it is that it stays in your mind and it gets stuck there and the words keep on kind of playing through like this endless loop, you know? Yeah, I had that experience this week and it made me crazy. No matter what I did, I couldn't get the song out of my mind. I tried calling Diane and we talked for a while and the song sort of receded, but then we hung up and it came back. I put on the Red Sox game and, well, that was almost more torture than the song itself. It just kept on coming back time and time again. I think it's safe for me, because it's now been 5 days, I think it's safe for me to share this song with you, although I may regret it. It actually comes from the Sound of Music of all places. Where does that come from? Just out of your head, right? Although this is the 50th anniversary of the release of the Sound of Music, and it admittedly is one of my favorites. Diane and I watched it not that long ago. Maybe that's why it's so known to me. But what was odd is it wasn't my most favorite song. You know, Doe a Deer is a song that makes me smile, and these are a few of my favorite things. So it makes my feet tap, you know, and Edelweiss always brings a little tear to my eye. I'm a little mushy around that point. It wasn't any of those songs. The song that came to my mind was, how do you solve a problem like Maria? Why? I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great song. Any song that has in its lyrics the word liberty, gibbet, or no wait, what's the word? I wrote it down. No, that's it. It's liberty, gibbet. What does that mean? Tell me later. It's a great song. There are other words that they're trying to use to capture Maria, right? They call her a will-o'-the-whip and a darling, a heathen, and a clown. I love listening to the nuns sort of go back and forth. And I particularly love it when the Mother Superior, frustrated by all this sort of, you know, back and forth, she just sort of supremely holds up her hand like this and just falls in silence. I wish I had that power when I home. What is clear in the singing of that song is that it is nearly impossible to sum up Maria with just one word. Almost as impossible as it is to sum up our God with just one word. Or even 2 words, or 3 words. Nearly impossible. So today is Trinity Sunday. There are several things I can tell you about Trinity Sunday as a tradition in the Christian church. One of them is that it is that Sunday when the rector looks for someone else to preach. But since I was out of town last week, I couldn't do that. It also is the Sunday when all around Christendom we celebrate this doctrine that is actually central to our identity, the doctrine of the Trinity. Now you probably, if you've been in church more than once or twice in your life, you probably know that the Trinity is the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Or if you saw 4 weddings and a funeral, it's Holy Spirit. But do you know that the debate on the doctrine of the Trinity created more heresies, more tension, more conflict, more excommunications than any other debate in all of Christendom? I mean, people just couldn't figure it out. I gotta believe that God was just wanting to hold God's hand up like Mother Superior and silence them back in the 4th century, but that wasn't possible. Thomas Jefferson once wrote this letter about the Trinity. All mankind, from the beginning of the world to this day, have been quarreling, fighting, burning, and torturing one another for abstraction unintelligible to themselves and to all others, and absolutely beyond the comprehension of the human mind. Now you know why I so much preach the Trinity. It's hard to sum up God. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, those are just labels. They don't really describe to us who God is. I mean, if you're in church, maybe they're familiar, and maybe they're sort of comforting in their familiarity. But if you're not one who comes to church very often, or even if you do they really speak to you about how you know and experience God? Do they really describe God for you? I think what is powerful and wonderful about this celebration of the Trinity is that it does challenge us to figure out, well, how is it that we can name God? How is it that we can describe God? Because the Trinity is about how we encounter a living act of God in our very own experiences. That's what they were trying to do back in the 4th century. We still need to figure out how to do that because we're still trying to put language to this mystery that we call God. So at the risk of inviting you into heresy, I actually want to ask you to take a stab at it. And what I mean by that is, so I want you to just shout out for all of us here, how is it that you experience a living God? How is it that you would describe God? I promise you won't be excommunicated, whatever you say. But how is it that you have experienced and will describe your experience with God? Can you just shout it out?
Merciful.
God is love. How else?
Merciful.
As family. Soothing. Forgiveness.
Kindness.
Compassion. Kindness.
Grace.
Pervasive. You can tell he's a writer. He uses big words. Inspiring. Healing. Always present.
In the graceful acts of other people.
In the graceful acts of other people. In the graceful acts of other people. Challenges. What's that? Birth. Great. Thank you. It's impossible to sum up God in any trinity of words. But your experiences, your descriptors, that helps us to know that God is still alive. That goes a long way. All right, now look. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the doctrine that is kind of dry. Don't go to sleep. I'm just going to give you a little bit of it, okay? But we talk about God as three consubstantial persons. Consubstantial. That's almost as hard to say as jiggery flippers or whatever that is. Where they settled back in the 4th century is that God is three consubstantial persons, all rolled up into one. By consubstantial, they mean that God is three persons of the same substance. All equal, all complete, all eternal, none of them created. They have been there from the beginning of time. They are there from the end of time. Nothing can diminish them. Nothing needs to complete them. God is three persons, all in one. There's God the Father, or God the Creator. Someone said that they know God through birth. That's that creative spark of God. Imagine God as creating, not just way back when, but still creating today. And when people say, wait, explain that to me, and I say, well, have you ever seen the baby born? Or have you ever stood and watched the sunrise? Or what about that thing that we go through every spring when we're looking at a ground that seems so dead and then life comes out of it in our garden? That's God, the Father, the Mother, the Creator. That's one way to know and experience God. But then there's God the Son, the second part of the Trinity. So that is the God that has walked in our shoes, has to grieve and to hope and to laugh. That is the God that came and changed things forever. Change how this world might be, change how we might be with one another and how we might be ourselves. That's God the Son, God the Redeemer, God who has changed and God who transformed. That's the second part of the Trinity. And the third is the Holy Spirit. And for some, they say that's the most abstract piece of God. I don't get that Holy Spirit thing. What is that Holy Spirit thing? And I love the Holy Spirit because it reminds us that God is still with us today. God is whispering to us. God is challenging us. God is comforting us. God is prodding us. God is guiding us. I love the notion that God isn't some disconnected, abstract, distant God, but God is a voice still with us today, that still small voice inside of us. Haven't you ever had an experience where you're struggling and all of a sudden a call comes over you? Or where you're questioning and all of a sudden an answer comes to you? Or where you're looking for help and all of a sudden here it is. The Holy Spirit is not some abstract ghost, but it is the way God still is active and present and moving inside and all around each of us. The pervasive stuff. The Trinity can sound dull and can sound unintelligible. But I think that our challenge as Christians, both as we are living with such a doctrine and as we try to excite others about a notion, is to somehow let people know that whether it's the Trinity or something else, that God is still active and can be experienced in our own human lives. Through loaves and fishes, through birth and death, through all of the experiences. Don't be afraid to talk about the Trinity. Just use your own words, your own experiences. No one's going to burn you at the stake anymore for something like that. Let me tell you, my second year of seminary, I took a class on doctrine. And that was the year that I was running a dorm for Northwestern University. So after the class, I went back, and there I am, surrounded by all these 19 and 20-year-olds who are far smarter than me. And we got into talking about the doctrine of the Trinity, and I gave them a bunch of sort of Greek that I had learned in my class, and they just looked at me, and they're like, what the heck does that mean? And one kid said, where's that in the Bible? And so very quickly I was humbled, and I kind of went back to my seminary professor with my tail between my legs, and I told him about the experience, and he looked at me, and wonderfully sympathetic, he just laughed at me, is what he did. He said, look, we talk about this in the classroom, but I don't expect you to go and say that stuff out on the streets for crying out loud. He said, you got to find your own words. Here's the doctrine. But now, make it come alive by your own experience, by your own words. That's the challenge for Christians. Don't let this Trinity Sunday be something you're scared of, or something you're checking out on, or something that you're disconnected to. Let it be a Sunday that invites you to find your own words to describe how God is active. God is spectacular. God is alive still today. And if you're not sure where to start, then maybe go back to the sound of music, where we hear she'd out-pester any pest, drive a hornet from its nest. She could throw a whirling dervish at a whirl. She is gentle, she is wild, she's a riddle, she's a child. Or how do you solve a problem like the Trinity? How do you hold a moonbeam
in your hand.